Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on Civic Tech, the African Civic Tech Innovators Meet. Here in this session, we'll be illustrating the regional experiences of different civic tech organizations and initiatives in Africa, where they'll share their stories and experiences of how they're using technologies to allow citizens hold governments accountable and also drive better service delivery. So the purpose of these engagements is basically to create a reservoir of case studies on civic tech best practices and lessons. And in this session, we hope to learn a lot on the best civic tech practices and lessons. So we have with us at the moment, so we have three panelists, and we have with us Professor Caroline Khene. She is Professor of Information System at Rhodes University and Senior Lecturer in the UK at De Montfort University. And she's also Co-Director at MobiSAM, a civic tech organization based in South Africa. And we have with us Seth-Phares Gnavo. He is a tech enthusiast, and he's also a tech entrepreneur and a software developer, and he has a passion for artificial intelligence and machine learning. So he is founder of Adiyeaba, and which is focused perhaps on providing sustainable food solutions, but we'll learn from him later today in this session. And we also have with us from CTIN, Melissa, who is the program manager, and Geishi, who is the national coordinator. So let's begin with the first round of questions. And firstly, I would like to know from your work, like about the organization that you represent or you founded. Tell us a little bit about your initiative, your work, and your vision.
Oh, thanks for the introduction, Radhika. So I'm a director for two projects, but the main project is MobiSAM, which stands for Mobile Social Accountability Monitoring. This project was started in 2012 by Dr. Hannah and Debbie Coulson, who are also residents in Makana municipality in South Africa. And it all started off as simple as experiencing a problem in a municipality. They wanted to bathe their children in the afternoon. They opened the taps and black water came out. They were saying, okay, how can we actually communicate more effectively with government to talk about the main issues that are happening to individual citizens around the municipality, no matter what the walks of life are. So whether it's a high income, low income, middle income individual, how do we hold them accountable for the kind of services they're actually supposed to be providing to its citizens? So then MobiSAM was birthed. They tried to find a way to sort of merge the process of social accountability monitoring, which was developed by PSAM, the Public Service Accountability Monitor, and then also merge the use of technology to sort of provide that ability for citizens to see what other people are reporting on and to see the progress in which government could actually respond to those issues. So at the end of the day, it wasn't just about, applying an adversarial approach to how government performs its services, but providing that key link and ability to communicate effectively between government as well as citizens based on what the rights are of citizens. Then out of that birthed MobiSAFADES, which I initiated following up from MobiSAM. So MobiSAM focuses on basic service delivery. So you're looking at water, electricity, parks and recreation, and so on. But when you're looking at MobiSAFADES, its focus is on another kind of service, which is sexual reproductive health services. The need for this project came about because of adolescent youth were being denied access to sexual reproductive health services. And government was asking, where's the evidence that this is the situation? There were many social cultural issues around access with health facility staff and the youth. So SAFADES, the NGO, then approached us to implement a similar initiative to MobiSAM, but this time focusing on reporting by adolescent youth anonymously and working in health facilities. And so that's what we have been continuously working with. And I would say we're always learning. There's no clear solution to it. Government changes, people change, But the idea is to try and find ways around these challenges to make it a sustainable initiative so that citizens can report on the reality of what they're facing. Yeah.
Thank you. And how do you use technology? Do you use WhatsApp to inform or engage the youth?
So with MobiSAM, we have a mobile application, but we mainly started off with a desktop internet-based application where people could report on issues, and then they get assigned by the municipality to the relevant department. Then they get resolved, and then only the citizen can say that they close the ticket because they're the ones who see that it actually has been resolved. We also work with existing platforms. You can't just rely on, the beautiful application developed, but look at leverage of existing platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp, SMS, because not everyone can have access to the application effectively. And sometimes, you're faced with people that struggle with digital literacy. So you have to work with intermediaries to sort of receive those reports and actually record them on the behalf of citizens. That's the MobiSAM application. Now, MobiSAFAIDS is also similar, but now we have, they focus mainly on the mobile app, and they prefer using the mobile app because that's what the youth like to use. They use the mobile app to report on issues. They also work with what they call SAM champions, social accountability monitoring champions, who are the youth, to also report on behalf of some young people who cannot access the application directly.
I am Seth-Phares, co-founder of Adiyeaba, but I'm also the catalyst of Digital Woelab. This is a little bit different from Woelab. We work together with the Woelab to create technological solutions that are really focused on the questions of durability, sustainability, and also how to use those kind of technologies to actually propose some solutions that are relevant in the context of Africa. What we do is to basically it is a sort of utopia. It's called UpCity. And the approach is to really be a firewall against all the current trends that capitalism and globalization brings, talking mainly of the big firms like Google, Amazon, Facebook, and the others. So we propose solutions that are easy to use and respond to the needs of African societies. And specifically, we are developing a lot of systems, but among those systems, we have CIS. CIS is a sort of alternative currency, an exchange system that allows people to exchange value without strictly needing to have for instance, a bank account, which is difficult to have in Africa. When you see the rate of people who have a bank account is really low. So it's a good alternative for the populations in order to be able to exchange goods and services. Our approach is a little bit radical because we don't align with the overall global vision of capitalism that does not necessarily favor the poor. And when you see the context of Africa, it's a place where there's a lot of poor people. It is not always fair. So this is why we really advocate the development of alternative solutions that valuably help the communities evolve.
So when did you start this CIS? When did you launch it?
CIS was launched this very year, and we have had an initiative last month when we distributed some goods to people, and people were able to acquire those goods. But the vision that we have is even bigger than that. This is just one of the solutions that we put forward this year. And also, it also helped in the context of COVID, because this is even why we decided to launch it this year, because we thought that the context and the situation was really favorable for such a solution to be launched.
Can you please explain a little bit more on how it's favorable for during the times of COVID, and how many buy-ins do you have?
For instance, during the time of COVID, you know that the physical currency that we carry is also a potential source of spread of the virus. This is a way people can contract the virus. By using our solution, people are able to only use their smartphone, but be able to pay for anything, provided that the people you are exchanging with are also part of the system. We also, like I just said, created an initiative to give people some resources for free. Among those resources, we had some food mainly to assist the most vulnerable populations in the neighborhoods.
So I just wanted to find out one more thing about how many people are subscribed to this app.
When we launched the application last month, we had up to 50 direct users who actively use the app. But this month, by I believe Saturday, we will do another event that will bring in more people in order to start democratizing the technology.
Thank you. Carolyn, from you, I would like to know how you're measuring impact or change.
How measuring impact? That's a good question. So with impact, that takes a couple of years. Let's just say that sometimes 10 years to even show any results. But what we've been doing is before we start any project, we apply a comprehensive approach to evaluation. So when you look at comprehensive approach, you look at evaluating different stages of the project, which feed into the actual impact assessment at the later stage. So we always conduct a baseline study, which we did for MobiSAM and MobiSAM, to sort of understand the current situation in relation to how people report on access to lack of services, the way government is structured, looking at the technological status in terms of who has access to internet, who doesn't, what are the communication ecologies that are happening in the communities you're working with. After that, then we work into sort of like a needs assessment. What do we need from the application? And how can we frame it and theorize how it should work and what we should expect it to do and the outcomes of it? So then we sort of frame our project around that, because it's not just about the technology, it's also about forming those relationships and networks. Who are those key stakeholders you need to actually engage with to use the application and to make sure that things that are reported on actually get to the right technician in the municipality to address it, as well as the civil society to lobby on issues that have not been addressed for many years. It took time, and we still are shaping it because we have what we call demand-driven needs. So that's the needs assessment. Then we have a process assessment, which we actually just done for MobiSAM. So the process assessment is sort of like trying to see how things are going in the middle, how things are doing. Just launched MobiSAM last year in March, after about a year of developing and organizing networks and stakeholders. And so at this stage, we want to see, has it had any change or impact? Well, not impact, outcome in the short term. What are we seeing in terms of the positive implications and the negative implications, and how do we strategize so that it's actually more sustained in the various communities we're working with? And what did we miss in planning in the first place? So the process assessment, the results that we get from that will then feed into our impact assessment, which we will conduct probably in about 2 or 3 years to see, what impact has actually happened, changes have happened based on how we responded to the process assessment results and re-strategized how the project should work effectively.
When did you start Seth-Phares?
MobiSAM is sort of one of the pillars, part of a bigger program called Transforming Lives. MobiSAM sits under the pillar of social accountability monitoring, but there's also, they have to sort of sensitize governments around the issues that adolescents are facing, work with policy formulation and so on. But social accountability monitoring just plays a part of the bigger picture. That project actually started in 2018, engaging with government, getting the right stakeholders involved, networking with civil society in the different countries, because it's 6 countries that you're working with for MobiSAM. And then, so it took about a year before you even introduced the technology, because we had to develop it, we had to revise it, we had to make sure people were going to use it. So there's a groundwork you need to actually work on.
Thank you so much, Seth. I think you had already spoken about it's a very recent app. And so you've only had 50 in terms of impact. And I was just wondering, do you have funding? Because often when we look at impact, it's often the donor or the funders who look at a particular, they have a way of defining what the outcome should be. So in that sense, do you have something, you have a funder, and do you have a mileage, or how you're measuring impact?
Our initiative is, like I said, part of a bigger project called UpCity. And it is a small TT project that we launched in 2012. and it is completely self-funded. The ideology is to include people, all kinds of people from all backgrounds, to come and work and help develop democratic technologies that have a good impact. So it is 100% self-funded, but we face some challenges and difficulties because of that, because when you don't have enough resources to invest into such projects, it takes a lot of time to come to market. It is hard to have a clear and simple stream of clear flow when the project is launched. So this is a challenge. And also, we notice the governments don't currently have the same vision that we have, which is to really be an alternative to all the solutions that are imported. Today, if you go online, 99% of the solutions you find are really solutions developed by the GAFA and other actors. So this is the approach that we had, which is to develop technologies ourselves and in the process include the most people to make those solutions inclusive and also promote the redistribution of wealth, because the people who contribute to the development of those technologies are the very people who are going to use it and the people who are going to benefit from it. This is the challenges that we face. But I believe that in the coming years, it will be more and more important to consider the things that we are doing, because you can see that even in Europe, for example, there are many problems that occur in terms of how the cities are built. Will they be sustainable in 2050? For instance, in Africa, the population will double by 2050. So how do we have solutions that actually can help the people locally and give them the ability to own their data? We are in the information age, and it is important to have ownership of the data we produce. So if we develop systems that allow people to exchange goods, to buy and sell things, do responsible waste management and things like that, we believe that this is the way forward.
Thank you so much. I think we should leave it to Seth to speak a little bit about the Woelab.
Woelab is the basis of Hub City. Woelab puts in place the framework that allows us to really think about how we should develop the technologies, what technologies should we develop, what solutions should we bring to the table. And Woelab has created sort of a forum, which is called Data Forces, that was started in 2017, I believe, the first edition. And the idea was to create a platform where people can express themselves and also talk about everything related to data and things like that. It was made in collaboration with the Embassy of the United States in Togo, and a platform was developed at the time to control the elections. So basically, people could, through a mobile application, have an oversight on how the elections are being held. So there's no possible way they can be rigged in some way. So this is one initiative that started, and it was repeated the following years in 2018 and 2019. Unfortunately, this year we didn't hold it because of COVID. The idea is to bring together people from the civil society and all the actors who have projects that are relevant in the civic tech environment, but also topics that are related to data management and information management, to create a platform where people can express themselves and propose new solutions that can be implemented on the ground.
Thank you so much. Can you please share at least 2 to 3 experiences that you had, kind of lessons, while implementing your solutions on the ground?
Yes, first of all, it's that people don't have real alternatives to the solutions that are imported. This is a huge opportunity, because when you work together with the population and the people, and you include them in the process of development of the technologies, you have an easier way to reach people who actually really need the solutions that you are developing. But sometimes we also find cases when people don't really understand the idea that we are promoting, And this is because we live in societies where it is mostly governments that dictate how things are made. So people sometimes either reluctant or they don't really understand what we do. So we try to balance things, but in general, we believe that our responsibility is to create alternatives that people can really rely on and be able to express themselves through those channels. If you take the Western world, for instance, things are made in a way that for anything, if you want to have the services of a carpenter, you know where to go. But here you go to the carpenter and you order your table. This is how things are made. So in our context, we're in a context where you can actually do co-construction and build with people on the ground. And this is a good experience. And we started many projects like this that are supported by the people, like a Scope, which is a project where people contribute to waste management. All the waste that produce in the households are collected. We treat the waste, and some part of it is recycled. And this is how, together with the population, we have a horizontal approach. We are not capitalists trying to rule over everyone, but we work with the communities and help them have solutions that make their lives better.
So to educate, I would say, or to communicate your message, especially with regard to the CIS application you were talking about, do you have special communication methods, or the session that you're going to have next month, is that part of that, to let people know what you're doing and for them to understand?
Yes, for now we mainly communicate through Instagram and social networks. You can find us on the social media. For CIS in particular, this is something that we launched not a long time ago, just last month. So it is still being developed. It's still getting traction. We are hoping that it is a solution that truly will have an impact as much as the other products that we already proposed, including Urbanetic for sustainable food production, Scope for waste management, and also Webots. Webots is a project that is also a little bit related to Scope for waste management, but we use electronic waste to fabricate 3D printers that can be used to have some little devices that we can print easily and help people in the neighborhoods to have tools that they need on the go.
Is that how you're using your enthusiasm for machine learning and AI? How
Sure.
are you using it?
Yeah, sure. We also for CIS we use some machine learning methods to also detect fraud and things like that, because in order to guarantee that the system is reliable, you have to have a minimum of guarantee that it is secure. We try now a way to use the technologies that developed by the people we are trying to combat, but in our context. Because if you take a technology, it depends on how you use it. If you use it for good, it will be good. If you don't use it for good, it will not be beneficial.
Thank you so much. Carolyn, can you please share with us please 3 or even 1 to 2 lessons that you learned?
Working with government, it's very easy to quickly give up, with the various challenges you go through. But what I have noticed is you sort of need to build and scaffold and the responsiveness. So in civic tech we talk a lot about responsiveness and building responsiveness, and government should be responsive, but it's not something that you achieve overnight per se. So what we've noticed is there are different levels of responsiveness. Those levels will vary with individuals, with departments, with sections, with municipalities themselves. But being aware of those key levels and differentiating those different levels of responsiveness are very important to identify areas in which you can actually make an influence and get key actors to change the way the municipality or government functions. Identifying those responsiveness issues, being aware of them, and finding ways to mitigate and work around them. But most importantly, if you have different levels of responsiveness in government departments, so maybe the communications department may be so keen on us, communicating with citizens, but then, you look at maybe the water and sanitation department says, oh no, we don't want to communicate with citizens. We don't want to have more tickets to address, or we don't have enough labor, we don't have enough resources. So there's that resistance. So what can you do to make sure you sort of address those levels of responsiveness and get certain individuals who work in municipality to sort of develop cohesion across those departments, to see the value of the initiative you're trying to implement? Finally, then the issue, even building up on that lesson, you always need to look at a project, any technology, ICT for development projects or civic tech project. I always say you need to look at those three levels of, are you addressing access for both citizens and government? Maybe government, the internet is not accessible in communication departments where they're most supposed to actually be accessible. There, those deadlocks. But then you also look at citizens. Not everyone has access to data. South Africa has the highest data costs. You know that. What can we do to mitigate those? Then, on top of access, then you look at capacity. Do citizens know what they can do with the data that they have access to? What are their data rights? And what are the ethics around collecting their data? So it's from use of technology to use of technology to hold government accountable, to use of technology to protect the views of youth. So that's capacity and digital literacy. Then finally, motivation. Are people motivated to actually use the technology for its intended purpose? If they have reported previously before on an issue on service like sanitation, and then later on government has not responded, what difference will it make when they use technology? Well, as government, maybe if there are some individuals in municipalities who really, really do want to do the right thing and do the job properly, but they don't have that support, from higher levels in government. And because they don't have that support, they'll just, play the game that has been played, everyone for themselves, God for us all. Making sure you build those motivations and those key stakeholder engagements to make sure you sort of encourage and motivate people to use the technology for its intended purpose.
Can you give us just one kind of a real life example, maybe dealing with any of these three levels in terms of how something changed? Because you're still here, you're still working, you didn't give up.
Recently, I don't know if you've been following the news, but the municipality was taken to court and they wanted to dissolve the council because of the service delivery performance in the municipality. And so civil society chose to collect a lot of information. So from individuals, from service providers, and also from MobiSAM, to show evidence that people have actually been recording and reporting on a sanitation issue, but it has not been addressed for many, many, many years. And at the same time, government also used MobiSAM to say that, no, we actually been responding to some of these issues. So you can see that, there's a bit of a motivation aspect addressed there. And there's a bit of a capacity, working with civil society and also legal organizations to understand the value of the data that can be put to use when engaging with government. So there's that motivation and there's a capacity as well as access. I believe it could actually be improved way more, because you'll find that in MobiSAM, for example, we have what we call Grahamstown East and Grahamstown West. And Grahamstown East is mainly, your townships and people living in rural areas or very marginal conditions. And then you have the West, who are more affluent, and at the university, people are there, more affluent members of the citizens are there. And they're the ones who complain the most, because they are more aware of their rights, but they also have access to the technology to make those reports. Whereas in the East, they're dealing with a couple of issues. They're not motivated because the government hasn't been doing anything. They don't have the capacity to understand the power of their rights. Those are some examples.
Are you doing anything to engage, to kind of educate or inform citizens what they can do via your platform?
When you're developing such a project, there are so many domains involved, and I only learned of that as I got involved, because my background is mainly on information systems, technology, and a bit on development. But to have the expertise and understanding of what happens when you're looking at civic rights and government and what they should be held accountable, it's really limiting for us. So we had to engage with civil society organizations like PSAM, and we'll work also with the Grahamstown Residents Association, the UPM, Unemployment People's Movement, what's it called? Is it Black Sash? So, we had to work with those existing local organizations. Already had some activities happening around lobbying for services, and the background knowledge as well. And so they played a role in also involving us in some of their citizen education training workshops. They involved us in meetings. We attended a couple of forums to sort of inform citizens of alternative ways to communicate. And municipality also helped out in sort of informing citizens on how they could use the platform, but also what they could use it for. Yeah, civic education. If I had a diagram to sort of show the whole picture of what's involved in this whole project, you will see on one small part. So it's like one, two, three, 4, 5 components to it. That one part only speaks to the technology. The other parts speak to partnership. They speak to strategizing and networking and engaging. They speak to evaluation. They speak to civic education. So yeah, there are a lot of key elements that need to be considered.
What are the emerging opportunities that you see in civic tech, and how would you like to engage with it, provide solutions for? And is there some other resources that you need?
Well, my hope is that, the local voices can be heard and can be heard at a high level in government, national level. So we have the Vuleka Mali platform, and it's pretty much a open budget platform. So it provides information to citizens on, how money is spent or allocated in the country. And so, for instance, if you look at Grahamstown, it's been a water situation. They've been having a drought. The infrastructure is old and the pipes are continuously bursting. And if you check the budget allocation for that area or even the province, you might see that maybe they actually hasn't been enough allocated towards infrastructure. When you see it's a prominent issue with the water infrastructure. And then so citizens can say, no, something wrong here. Why hasn't this been addressed, and why is it allocated to this issue more than that issue, and so on. So I'm trying to sort of I would like to see an opportunity for citizens to have some sort of platform that they can link to Vuleka Mali to actually easily identify the issues that government need to budget for, because they're always asking for citizens' feedback on the budget. There's a key link between MobiSAM as well and the open budget portal, but you need those sort of middle applications to actually build on the API from Vuleka Mali to develop mobile applications that can directly link and inform citizens in an easier way, in an interface that they can easily interact with.
And I think there was a question for you, Carolyn. They don't know, how does MobiSAM navigate a non-responsive municipality?
No, it's not totally non-responsive. They do respond to some of the issues that have been reported. But in cases where they haven't responded, or our tickets have not been closed, evidence has been collected over time, whether it's on MobiSAM or even on WhatsApp, because the communication happens there as well, then they have to be held accountable for why it has not been addressed, even though it's been reported time and time again.
Keishi, would you like to share something on, because I see you were communicating with Mabisa?
He mentions that the initiative he wanted to share about is called Data Forces, and it's, he says, in a way, a Pan-African observatory of data issues, which was set up by Woelab. It's born from the first #eCitizen Days event, which was on the theme from datafication to data activism. So it's a digital think tank, is the idea, that tries to be a lobby, a lab, and carry this kind of civic tech project on the platform. So that's what he's shared so far.
Seth, what are the emerging opportunities that you see in civic tech, and how would you like to engage with, provide solutions for, and the resources that you need?
I believe that the opportunities are mainly related to the fact that more and more people are getting online, and it's an opportunity to get in touch with them through the solutions that we already have. Our perception is that you don't specifically need to have a particular application to allow people to engage with government, but the approach is to have alternatives that people can use in all areas of life, like food management and all the things that we talked about. And it is through those channels that you end up having something that is really a way for the people to self-govern itself. The chances that we have is that it's easier for people to get online and to access the simple solutions that we try to put on the market. And also, we have platforms and initiatives like data forces that help us communicate more about the ideas that we have, particularly about our project. We are currently forming a partnership with City in Benin, which is the smart city project of the government of Benin. So this is also an opportunity for us to put our solutions in more hands and democratize the access to information, the access to ethical solutions. If we have solutions that are crowdsourced, developed by the people itself, we don't have those kind of issues. So the opportunities are that more and more people are getting trained, getting tech savvy, and understand the challenges. And this is how we slowly but surely getting to the objective that we have, which is to fully democratize technology and allow the people to have a system that allows them to govern themselves and live by themselves without necessarily needing the governments who don't really always do a good job.
As a fellow African, what I've noticed, because I only just recently came to the UK, so I've been in South Africa all along, and what I've seen is when I come here, their focus is on attacking those emerging technologies. So more like saying like artificial intelligence has ethical implications as well as blockchain and other emerging technologies. Yet we are still seeing the opportunities that they do present rather than bashing them and seeing their potential, you know. So as a fellow African implementer, innovator, or advocate for technology and use in society, what would you say we need to actually take into consideration when we are introducing these new technologies, you know, to our communities?
Yes, I believe that the approach is to make clear that any technology depends on, the use of the technology, it depends on the person that is using the technology. So at core, the technologies are not bad. It's just that they are not well used. If you take artificial intelligence, for instance, it depends on how you use it. You can use it to kill people. You can use it to heal. To heal. So when people criticize the technologies, I believe we have to have serious discussions on how the technologies are used. This is why we put forward those platforms and projects. But we should also propose some alternatives and solutions to say, these are the solutions that people are giving us that are not quite ethical and have a sort of a threat for us. But what do we do? Do we only criticize or do we create alternatives? So we prefer to not only criticize, but also show that it is possible to use those technologies and tools to do good things.
I mean, just hearing what you're saying, I think with such projects, Civic Tech, for instance, when it comes to civic education and awareness, I think some people, Civic Tech activists, miss an important part on the education aspect, and that educating people on the use of technology, security threats, and the data you're actually sharing with government about yourself. You know, being aware of, you know, what am I sharing and what am I doing to myself if I'm sharing that information? So you're teaching them the value of the technology, but you're also teaching them to be resilient if there's a threat to access their information and so on and so forth.
This is really the idea, to responsibilize people so that they know that yes, we can actually do it ourselves. And if there's a threat, we can try to bypass, create a sort of firewall and have our own alternatives and solutions.
But we're already giving away our personal information to the private sector, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the question of data is quite sensitive because you have governments that, for instance, in China, there's a really strict approach on how data is managed. So the government holds information about the people and does all the kind of things. But in other places, it's big corporations, and this is somehow even more dangerous because there are some interests that are at stake. The investors, as far as they making more money, they're not really concerned about what is ethical or not. An approach would be to create distributed systems that take into account the fact that we should not have one entity that holds all the information, but it has to be spread and everybody has access to the information. And this way, people cannot get on top of other people and try to control them in a way.
Our question that our big question facing with MobiSAM as well as MobiSAFAIDS is, whose system is it? So who's in terms of technology, yeah? So the social scientists don't think too much, but whose platform is it? So if you look at MobiSAM, currently we're managing it because we're the academics involved in it, and at some point we have to hand it over to someone if it becomes sustainable in the community. Same thing with MobiSAFAIDS. SAFAIDS is the one sort of managing it, but at some point they need to give it to government or to a key stakeholder, or who we don't know. We don't want to give it to government because we're worried that they will control what can be seen and what cannot be seen. We can't leave it to the NGO because there's a sustainability question there. The NGOs are also funded for a period of time, and then they have to, hand it over and give capacity to whoever they hand it over to continue it. So there's a big question around that. And how do we negotiate that? Answering that question, because, who determines the data policy and how it works, and so there's a lot of gaps in this field, a lot of gaps that people need to take into consideration looking at civic tech.
I believe that we have a chance, which is to really have a brute force relation with the government, because if you have a platform that a lot of people use and they rely on the platform, you have a voice, and you can require that the data is managed in some way, is not completely handed to the government or some private institutions. If the people who are benefiting from those solutions, for example, the case when the government decides to shut the project down, okay, somehow. If the people who vote don't agree with this, the government will be somehow reluctant to imposing these sanctions. So I believe that if more people are included in the process, even the governments and the people who decide will think twice before to impose sanctions or restrictions on the use of those technologies.
This last exchange was really interesting because, and I think it relates to a question that Melissa was also asking. One of the things we've observed is that there is this kind of almost like a wasteland of civic tech initiatives, that they at some stage were running and now it's just a website, or the website is even dead. And I'm sure it relates to this point you were making now, Caroline. And I was kind of half jokingly trying to say, is it about finding appropriate institutional homes? Seth may be right that governments may not hamper them if they're popular, but that doesn't necessarily mean that government would take them on and carry them on. And there might even be a question about whether that's really a wise option in all cases, because, we've seen, even now recently, we've seen Tanzania, Ethiopia, Guinea, there's so many countries where we see government, when it suits them, shutting down even the internet or WhatsApp. So you can imagine if you have a civic tool in their hands and then it's to the whims of whoever is in power, I suppose that's not necessarily a stable option. As you said, Caroline, NGOs have a challenge with funding. So there are a couple of questions we've asked in that regard. One of them is, do we really need to be thinking about new funding models for some of these things? And that's probably a bigger question anyway, even for the NGO world, because I think we are coming to the limits of the old models there anyway. But with civic tech in particular, do we need to be thinking about what are the sustainability models for public interest tools? And is part of the answer to that in this idea that government can serve as a platform, maybe even as a resource, without necessarily owning and controlling things? Are we mature enough to do that? So maybe that's a question. Well, maybe it's an open question, but I also suggest, do we also need to explore the idea that some of these things should end and have a death ritual if indeed there's no sustainability option? But because in doing that, then it's conscious. At least it's not just leaving it because now suddenly there's no funding. Should we actually have a closure model that says, okay, we did this thing, we did it for 3 years, either there's no more need or nobody is willing to support it, and therefore we are consciously closing it, and we want you to know that it's closing. Because otherwise they just disappear overnight, and that's not helpful. To you I was interested in this cooperation you're having with data forces, and I didn't know if that's just between yourselves and Togo, or if it's a regional thing, and if there's a lot of that kind of cooperation going on in your region, because that's quite interesting.
Yes, currently we are mainly in Togo, but also in Benin, and the idea is to extend the thing in other countries of Africa, starting with Ghana, where we already have people there working with us on some projects. But the idea is to create some hubs all around the big major cities of Africa in order to expand their thing. But currently we are mainly in Lomé and in Benin. And soon enough, we'll start with Accra in Ghana, include more people to the cause. This is also a challenge because in order to create a sustainable platform like this one, we have to have more and more people who are ready to adhere to the projects. We can't just go to people and say, okay, here's the thing that we're doing, please join. We need to have people to also want to be part of the initiatives.
Great, thank you.
Looking at such projects, when you hit a deadlock, what do? You have to do something because it affects the way you live in the municipality. And what I've been trying to do over time is sort of like develop that identity for universities, especially in South Africa, and especially universities in small towns, in terms of the role that they should play in sustaining such initiatives that have so many brick walls hitting them over and over again. And, even if we have limited resources, like MobiSAM, we ran out of funding, but we still, use our time to keep the project going. If it's a technical issue, if it's an engagement issue, it's addressing conflict between stakeholders and stuff, we still try to get involved and, address it. So perhaps there is a key role that universities, should play in terms of sort of like, being the middleman and trying to sustain it, but at the same time learning from what we're seeing to incorporate it in our teaching and our research in producing tomorrow's leaders in government or the private sector. So that is still something we're learning. In fact, with the MobiSAM project, we're actually trying to answer those very questions that Getty was bringing forth. How do we strategize for a sustained initiative or an ongoing initiative? Who are the key stakeholders? And that's the next stage of the MobiSAM project that we're working with in the next coming year.
Such an insightful session. Learned so much. And thank you so much for your time.